Hello, everybody. Welcome to round 5 of the Florida Regional Championships. I am so excited for this matchup. Wolfe Glick versus Bryan Wood, aka some of you may know him from the CantoCast podcast. So I am so excited.
Yeah,
I'm so excited.
You've been giggling uncontrollably for a good 5 minutes since we put the players into play, so
Yeah.
very exciting. Just having a quick run down the teams as well. It looks like we've got some definite fun on the cards for us. We did, of course, have fun last round with Ashton's team, but I think we're going to keep that ball rolling
Definitely.
with the matchup we have here today.
Definitely. And I'm really excited to see what Wolfe brought, actually. I believe this is his first, sort of big event since the World Championships a couple months ago. So,
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that, he feels pretty good about this
I think
format.
he feels pretty good about this format.
He did win a World Championships in it, so quite an ask for Bryan here to tear through and really stand up to that. I think Wolfie's maybe playing a different team to the one he brought to Worlds. Everyone know that's a thing, so it's going to be hard for him to, keep that going. And hopefully the changes he made are something he's excited to play with.
Definitely. And I'm really excited to see, maybe he'll take some of those Pokemon we did see at Worlds and just play them differently. So I believe these trainers are getting started. We are in team preview. So Wolfe is on the top screen and he's running Rayquaza, Kyogre, Raichu, Hitmontop, Bronzong, and Klefki versus Bryan's Lopunny, Whimsicott, Scizor, Raichu, Kyogre, and Groudon. What a matchup.
Okay, there's something I'd love to touch on in each team. I think both team has maybe one thing that really stands out, something we've not seen today. Let's start with Bryan. He'll be on the bottom of your screen today, and he's running the Lopunny, something we don't see very often. We saw her have a flash in the pan back in 2014 to really counter those Kangaskhans that were running rampant, but if it can do so much now, I'll be interested. It does, of course, have a number of interesting support moves alongside its offensive moves, such as low kick and things like that usually uses to deal big damage. Be able to see what it does. And then on Wolfie's side, we do have a little something known as Klefki. Wolfie just tweeted out moments before this match, keys out for Wolfie. Not the usual use for that tweet, but for those of you who do want to support him, feel free to jingle your keys at home and see what Klefki brings to this matchup. Apart from that, though, it does look very similar to the Worlds team. Obviously, the Gengar's not there. He's got the Klefki instead, and maybe the Klefki's going to be providing support in the same way Gengar did for him, but it's going to be doing it with different kinds of moves.
Yeah, so here we are. We're starting game 1 of this round 5 at the Florida Regional Championships. We'll have to see what Pokemon these trainers decided to bring. Bryan's leading Kyogre and Raichu. I think a fairly safe lead into the Hitmontop and Kyogre lead from Wolfe.
Yeah, I mean, we did see this lead come out from Wolfe at Worlds. Interesting to see the Raichu come out from Bryan here. The worst case scenario for this is we're going to end up with a Raichu mirror match where both of them end up on the field and end up not being able to do anything. So Wolfie playing it smart, not bringing that with him, which I quite like. Brings the Hitmontop instead. Obviously it's going to lose if it goes for a fake out attempt against Raichu on the Hitmontop side of the field. Obviously it is going to be quicker, and we will go into this turn with the classic primal reversion animations getting us started here.
Yeah, it is the classic animations. I believe we saw Bryan's primal revert first, followed by Wolfe. Again, this could be an indication of speed, or it could just be a speed tie. We'll have to see how this turn plays out to get a better idea.
Yeah, I like the way that these players are setting up the board as well. They both bring that really offensive point in the Kyogre on their sides of the field. Then they both bring a very different supporting Pokemon. Hitmontop providing fake out. We saw it in the previous game, feint. Lots of fun moves that can provide like wide guard as well, which could limit the damage output coming from Bryan's Kyogre. Of course, Bryan has a fake out of his own. Raichu has a lot of tricks up its sleeves. We did see Endeavor on Wolfie's Raichu at Worlds, but it has all kinds of fun moves like Encore, which a lot of people seem to forget about. Brings fake out Nuzzle, which we did see at Worlds. So maybe he could use the Raichu to sneak out a little advantage here.
We are going to see that Hitmontop switch out on Wolfe, sending in his own Raichu. So almost a perfect mirror here. Fake out from that Raichu, going into Raichu on Wolfe's side of the field. So both Kyogre are going to be free to attack. We see Bryan's Kyogre move first with a Water Spout. It's going to deal a massive amount of damage to that Raichu, picks up the knockout. Doesn't do nearly as much to Kyogre on Wolfe's side of the field, but if he followed up with a Water Spout of his own, that could have weakened the power. Instead, we are going to see a Origin Pulse connecting with both Pokemon, also picking up the knockout on Raichu.
So yeah, pretty much identical turn there. They both end up taking out each other's Raichu. They both do pretty similar amounts of damage to each other as well. We see the Kyogre and the Kyogre actually, both taken a little about 20% of their health, maybe a little bit more on Wolfie's Kyogre actually, but now we get to see which Pokemon they bring in to partner it, and they've gone for a very different approach
A
here.
very different approach indeed. Whimsicott out on Bryan's side of the field, Rayquaza out on Wolf's side of the field. I think Whimsicott might be a little bit intimidated right now, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, Whimsicott, we did see the earlier Whimsicott we had on stream, obviously carried Moonblast, so it can put some pressure down on Rayquaza with that. Probably not enough to knock it out, but of course Rayquaza brings such offensive pressure with the Dragon Ascent, and I feel like, there's not much on Bryan's side of the field, assuming Wolfie's looking to do the same thing he did at, obviously, Worlds. He may be able to just get a nice Sword stance up.
Yeah, we are going to see that Rayquaza take the opportunity to Mega Evolve here. So we could see a Sword Stance. We could see it try and attack. Before we see any of that, we see it set up Delta Stream. So it'll weaken any potential Ice Beams from Bryan's Kyogre. But we're not going to see that this turn at all. Kyogre going for a Protect. Whimsicott using Tailwind to ensure that Kyogre and I believe the Whimsicott will be faster than both the Pokemon on Wolf's side next turn. Dragon Ascent into the protecting Kyogre. It fails. Ice Beam from Kyogre on Wolf's side into that Whimsicott. Brings it down to what looks like a Focus Sash.
Yeah, the Focus Sash keeping Whimsicott alive for one more turn to do something probably very useful, actually. We've seen the Prankster ability coming in to really help Whimsicott set up, and I think being able to set up the Tailwind is really good for Bryan there. So whatever he has in the back is going to be able to come in and do large amounts of damage, especially if it's that Groudon. Then he's probably trained it with a little more hit points, maybe some defenses, and it'll be able to come in and do really big damage. We are going to see the Whimsicott leave the field and probably see that last Pokemon right now.
Yeah, we do see the Whimsicott switch into Groudon here, which is kind of an interesting read, I think, on Bryan's part. Whimsicott only had 1 HP left. I'm not really sure why he'd switch it out. He certainly can't switch it back in for anything unless he wants to, have it be knocked out for the remainder of this game. So we'll have to see what exactly he was thinking with that play. Groudon will take this opportunity to set the Sunlight up on the field. Rayquaza switching out as well. We're going to see Hitmontop come in its place. So going to pick up that Intimidate onto Groudon, which will certainly help. It won't be as big of a deal, I guess, for Kyogre in this situation. Kyogre using an Ice Beam, targeting what was that Rayquaza is now a Hitmontop, does a significant amount of damage and reveals the eject button. So if Wolfe wants, he can reset the Delta Stream here, or he can send in whatever other Pokemon he has. In this case, we do see that Rayquaza. So all down to what his Kyogre is going to do this turn. I'm not really sure what to expect, but now that the weather's back in its favor, we could see a Water-type attack, which is exactly what we get. A Water Spout knocking out that Groudon and bringing Kyogre to just above half health.
Yeah, I've said it before and I'll say it again. Wolfie is fantastic in these games that he plays with switches, eject buttons, volt switches, and all those kind of fun moves that allow you to be moving the board a lot quicker than just the standard switches at the beginning of the turn. Really pay dividends, and he just shows the caliber of player he is in that turn. Bringing in the Hitmontop, knowing it's going to get hit, knowing he's going to be able to bring back in Rayquaza, and then he's going to be able to get the Water Spout off. So he plans that turn out absolutely perfectly, and he manages to get a Water Spout off and take a knockout on the Groudon and get control of the weather again.
Yeah, and he switches out his Kyogre once again, I think, to just ensure that rain will be the last weather up on the field for this game. Extreme Speed from that Rayquaza is going to knock out the Whimsicott, dealing that 1 HP of damage. I think we're going to see Kyogre try and deal some damage with that Water Spout this turn. I don't think it's going to get the knockouts that Bryan needs to take this game 1, though.
No, and a really smart move by Wolfie there. Obviously, he'd like to know a little bit more about the Whimsicott, but he doesn't want to know about it if it's going to cause him problems. So to Extreme Speed and go before the Prankster, obviously Extreme Speed having a higher priority bracket, just make it a nice safe way for Wolfie to get rid of that Whimsicott. So as you were saying, it wasn't really able to come back in and do anything because it was clinging on with that Focus Sash, and I think it's fairly safe for Wolfie just to tidy up this game now with the Rayquaza, especially with the strong winds, keeping it safe from Ice Beams.
Yeah, and this Dragon Ascent right here will be the last move of this game. It will knock out that Kyogre, I believe, from that range of health. So I think it was good for Bryan to protect that second to last turn, get a little bit more information, I think we learned that Hitmontop got Fake Out. I don't think we saw it use it prior to that. But, going into game two, I think he's really going to have to rethink his strategy and maybe try and be a little bit more aggressive and try and punish Wolf for all the switches that he usually does.
Yeah, it's quite hard to punish the way Wolfe does the switching, though. Obviously, he uses the eject button as an extra switch, essentially, so he manages to do really well off that. And I think the deciding factor in that game was Wolfie's use of the Rayquaza. Bringing it in to reset the weather was really nice. Doing huge amounts of damage with Dragon Ascent was really nice. So it'll be interesting to see if Bryan can adapt and find something that's a little more reliable on his team to take out the Rayquaza. He's clearly scared to bring the Lopunny, I feel like, because of the threat of that Rayquaza. So when it takes the fighting type, of course, it's going to struggle against Dragon Ascent. But there are definitely things on his team that can answer it. Obviously, Kyogre can hit it with Ice Beams, and there may be some, interesting moves on maybe Groudon or Raichu that would be able to do big damage to it too.
Yeah, speaking of interesting moves, I can't help but wonder if we'll see that Klefki from Wolf this game. I don't think he really needs it, but having a prankster of his own could certainly be another way to sort of offset the threat that Whimsicott brings to the field.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see if he decides to match the prankster. It can be really annoying if you're not prepared for it, but obviously Wolfie that game was very much on top of it. The only thing we saw come out of the Whimsicott was the Tailwind, which you can kind of, bank on. If there's other moves on there that are going to cause him a lot of problems, then he knows about them, so...
Yeah. So yeah, okay. There is the Klefki paired with Rayquaza as the lead, and Groudon and Raichu, interesting enough, come out on the field on Bryan's side.
Yeah, the keys are definitely out for Wolfie this game, and I love the fact that he's bought the Rayquaza, because Rayquaza, I think, is a lot stronger than people give it credit for in the way it can control the weather, because you get to choose how to do it with the timing of the Mega Evolution. So Bryan, of course, primal reverting as soon as he hits the field, and we did see Wolfie in his Worlds run be very smart about how he plays with that weather, with that strong winds coming in from the Delta Stream ability. I'm very curious to know what Klefki will do. If Bryan is really unsure about it, it's one of those things, if you've not seen a Klefki, you can't quite remember what it does. I mean, it got a bit of play a couple of years back, but now it's just like, oh, what does it do? And even if he was scared of it, he's not going to be able to take it out right now.
Yeah, we do see that Hitmontop come in for the Klefki, so Groudon forced to take yet another Intimidate, just as it did last round. So whatever it did this turn, probably not going to deal as much damage. We do see this Rayquaza Mega Evolve right off the bat, so it looks like Wolf is trying to get a little bit more of an aggressive stance on his weather control. Though it is worth noting with Airlock in play, while, the fancy Delta Stream animation isn't there, and while Rayquaza doesn't get protection from any super effective flying type, hits, the sun still wasn't going to deal that much boost to that Groudon, and Groudon revealing that it has Earth Power, interestingly enough. It deals enough damage to that Hitmontop to activate the eject button, and we'll just have to see what Pokemon Wolf decides to send in next.
Yeah, Wolf again throwing his favourite turn out, bring in Hitmontop, activate eject button, then bring in something of his choosing. At this point, it's the Kyogre, so now he gets the rain up, and of course he's got the boosted stats from Mega Evolving the Rayquaza with a beneficial weather. So a very strong turn for Wolf. I don't know how much the Raichu is going to be able to do going through the next two turns, though. I mean, if it has Nuzzle, being able to Nuzzle either of the Pokemon on Wolf's side of the field would be exceptionally strong.
Yeah, we'll just have to see what Raichu can do. We did see the fake out, so it's possible that Bryan is running, the typical kind of Nuzzle Volt Switch, maybe Protect. Sometimes Raichu runs Encore. I'm not sure if that's really going to help much here, though. It all comes down to how Wolf decides to play this. We're going to see Groudon on Bryan's side of the field go for that Protect, and Rayquaza going for a Sword Stance. So Wolf is definitely looking to power his Rayquaza up to get it ready to start dealing massive damage. Raichu, though, with that hidden power, it targets the Rayquaza, and it looks like that is super effective, but it misses the knockout by just a little bit of health, reveals it is holding that Life Orb item, and then takes a Origin Pulse from Kyogre. Will it be able to survive it, though? No, unfortunately, it is not.
No, and a really good play there from Bryan, showing off that he's actually got an offensive Raichu here, not one that's just disruptive and supports the team. It actually does a significant amount of damage itself. It does bring the Rayquaza into the red, and now he brings the Scissor in on Bryan's side of the field, which may actually be able to capitalize on that.
Yeah, I know. That's a really interesting Pokemon. I don't think we've seen much of Scizor at all this year, but, it seems like it would be a very popular pick given the fact that it does have Steel typing. Rayquaza switching out, Wolf trading his Sword Stance in favor of getting another Intimidate. We know that Groudon is at least partially special now, so it's possibly more to intimidate that Caesar than anything else. Groudon also switching out now. Bryan sending in his own Kyogre, so he has the ability to try and reset the sun. Wolfe has the ability to, try and get that Delta Stream up again, maybe to disrupt whatever weather that Bryan's sort of hoping for right now on the field. Caesar going for a feint, which is really interesting. Probably trying to pick up that KO on that Hitmontop. Water Spout from Kyogre, though, is going to deal massive damage, missing that knockout on Caesar by just a little bit.
Yeah, and I think the same way we had in the last game, the fact that the Sizzle lived through that, taking a huge special attack from a full health Kyogre, we could maybe theorize that the Scissor is very well dressed in a nice little vest this time. So another interesting item choice, just selection. And I feel like Wolfie doing very well to get the Rayquaza out of danger. He knows that the Rayquaza could get picked off by the Scissor, so he's just manipulating the board again, setting it up for himself.
Yeah, so speaking of manipulating the board, we are going to see Bryan take an attempt at that on his own, sending in his Groudon now to reset the sunlight to prevent Kyogre from going for any more water spouts. Fake out on that Hitmontop, though, sort of making that read, causing Bryan's Kyogre to flinch, and so not much really accomplished this turn, but Bryan's now in a position where if Wolfe wants to get rid of the sun, he certainly can do that.
Yeah, an interesting turn there from Bryan. Obviously, he wants to save Scizor to come in later and pick off the Rayquaza, so he gets it out of there, and he does manage to nullify the Water Spout coming from Wolfe's Kyogre. But at the same time, I think maybe Bryan wanted to save Groudon and bring it in at the same time as Rayquaza, with Rayquaza being notoriously faster than Groudon. Bringing it in would have been really nice at the same time and getting the sun up over the strong winds.
Yeah, we do see a switch on Wolfe's side of the field, but it's not for that Rayquaza. It's actually for the Klefki. Both Kyogre and Groudon protecting. Kyogre on Bryan's side of the field going for an Ice Beam into the Klefki. Not going to deal a lot of damage, but does get a crit for whatever that's worth.
Yeah, and a very smart switch from Wolfe there. Obviously, Bryan trying to make the read, thinking the Rayquaza is going to come back in to try and answer the Groudon. Then he goes for the Ice Beam into that slot. Wolfe being smart, though, and using his Pokemon advantage to bring in a Klefki. And now we might actually be able to see what Klefki can do for Wolfe. We don't have any knowledge on the moves it has, and neither does Bryan at this point either. So this turn is going to be absolutely essential for him to try and get a gauge on what kind of things it can do.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see. Klefki is one of those prankster Pokemon that never really was that popular throughout the 2015, 2014 metagame, but, it was known for bringing those screen, both Reflect and Light Screen, as we just saw. Also Thunderwave and Swagger, so maybe it's possible Wolfe has a little bit of disruption up on his team as well. We had an Ice Beam into Kyogre, Earth Power into that Klefki, barely misses that knockout, and shows that Klefki is holding a Citrus Berry. That Light Screen definitely already playing dividends on, Wolfe's side of the field, and another Water Spout from that Kyogre is going to evaporate in the sun.
Yeah, I think Wolfie was left without much to do there, so he just throws the Water Spout out, hoping that Bryan switches the Groudon in maybe. But, getting those screens up is really big, and we've seen that Bryan's Groudon actually has special type attacks. We haven't seen its fire type move of choice, but we have, of course, seen the Earth Power, so one could theorize that it is containing a special moveset.
With that eruption as well, definitely confirmed. We see a Thunder Wave from Klefki into Kyogre before it is knocked out by that eruption. Kyogre hardly taking any damage from that eruption thanks to this Light Screen. Kyogre on Bryan's side of the field will be fully paralyzed this turn, and Kyogre once again goes for a Water Spout in the sun.
Yeah, I mean, Wolfie doesn't seem too fussed about throwing out the Water Spout. Maybe he doesn't have anything that he thinks is preferred to try and get around it. I'm sure he does, but he's just trying to wait and bait out the switch. Now the strong winds are up, he will be able to get the Water Spout out. Be curious to see if he, of course, outspeeds the Groudon. We can see the hit point stat of the Groudon, and with such a low hit point stat, and it's fairly assumed, of course, that it is going to be a very pacey Groudon, and even if it is, it's not going to be doing anything this turn.
It's not. It goes for a Protect instead. Dragon Ascent from that Rayquaza will attack this turn, which means it is probably going to hit that Kyogre on Bryan's side of the field. Will it knock out, though, is the big question, and indeed it does. It's just Groudon, and I believe that Caesar left on Bryan's side of the field against the Rayquaza, Kyogre, and Hitmontop that Wolfe still has in the back.
Yeah, he's really up against it now, especially because he has no way to control the weather. Now he's down to his last two. He may be able to move before the Kyogre, but Kyogre's still likely to be able to get a Water Spout or an Origin Pulse off, maybe even a Scald. Scizor might be able to pick up the Rayquaza. Unfortunately, Scizzor's move pool, isn't going to be able to get around extreme speed. Feint potentially will be able to, but even with Technician, he's going to have to hope that it takes a knockout there.
Yeah, we do have to remember, though, Rayquaza did just Dragon Ascent, so its defense is lowered. So it's very likely that, if Caesar can use Feint this turn, which it actually can't because that Extreme Speed will knock it out. We could have seen a knockout there, but instead we see that Extreme Speed for the knockout. Earth Power on Groudon will move first and target that Kyogre and deal a little bit of damage. Again, that Light Screen just doing work, allowing Water Spout to pick up the knockout on Groudon, and it is a clean 2-0 win for Wolfe for both this game and the match.
Yeah, very, very tidy play by Wolfe. Didn't really see much from the Klefki. I mean, we did see the Light Screen and the Thunder Wave, but I'm wondering if he's carrying both screens, the double screens that have been so popular in previous years. I'd be interested to know if he has both, and if we see him in Top Cut tomorrow, maybe he'll show one off. I mean, the Light Screen that he bought this time was really strong, especially with both of Bryan's restricteds leaning towards that special end of the spectrum. So definitely fun to see that come out.
Definitely fun.
Something new. A little bit disappointed we didn't see Lopunny come out from Bryan, but it was going to have a really tough time if it did.
Yeah, I know that, in that small portion of 2014 where Lopunny sort of reigned supreme, sometimes trainers would bring it in and just not Mega Evolve it and just use its Limber ability to prevent it from being, Thunder Waved by Thundurus and all that good stuff. But in this metagame, maybe not so much. Though Bryan is 4-1 right now. He definitely still has a chance to make cut. All he has to do is just win out.
Yeah, he's still 4-1, and taking a loss to Wolfe is not a bad person to take a loss
Not
to
a loss,
at all.
not a bad person
You're
at
going to
all.
have a good resistance, and in this kind of format where you need to be losing to good opponents only, you can squeak through as long as you have good resistance on who you lost to. So neither of these players out at all. Obviously, Wolfe looking very safe going forward into the last 2 rounds of the day, feeling quite confident. I mean, that was a very tidy win by him, so I feel like he'll be looking forward to tomorrow already.
Yeah, definitely. One more win locks in the deal for him. In terms of what we're going to show next on stream, we're going to try and pull a couple elimination rounds next. So definitely a little bit higher pressure. We're going to try to look at some trainers who are just on the bubble. Maybe they'll make it into cut. They're not so sure. They're looking a little shaky. So if there's anybody you definitely want to see play, make sure to let us know over on Twitter. You can use that hashtag #PlayPokemon, and we'll be keeping an eye out for any suggestions.
Yeah, we'll look for get some elimination matches, maybe some games that go really, really tight, but we'll be coming up with those after the break, which we're going to cut to now.